Good evening, you're watching the Indian Express and we are back with our Bihar elections update. Today, once again, we are joined by our correspondents from the field, Santosh Singh. Welcome, Santosh ji, and Deepankar Ghosh. Santosh ji and Deepankar have both been on the field since before campaigning for the Bihar elections began. And today, the last voting for the last phase has concluded, and we'll be joining them about what they have figured out about the elections from the ground. Santosh ji, we'll start with you. On the last day of campaigning came this surprise announcement from Nitish Kumar that this would be his last election. So how should we read that? How much of an impact is it likely to have? And was this expected, or is it as much as a surprise as people seem to think?
I think it was completely off the cuff. He didn't plan it. Had he planned it, he could have elaborated. And you can imagine he's 69 and he's seeking another term. And in any case, even if he comes to power by the end of the term, he would be 74. For all purposes, it is his last election. So it is. I don't think there is much to read into it. He just said it, and since opposition was harping on that tiredness factor, as you said in the last debate, Thakawa Nitish factor. So he's under attack for that comment. But I think it was very spontaneous. When you speak, when you don't have a script, then you speak something which is very much there in your heart. That's it.
But if, although exit polls are predicting a Mahagathbandhan majority, but if BJP JDU do come back to power, do you think this might mean that we'll see a chief minister change midway through the term?
Number one, let us wait. It's pretty tight. I have not covered any such election which is that much tight. Okay. I don't know. So many things are interplay. I'm still waiting for that voting percentage. It's something like Madhya Pradesh result. And even a 1.5% swing of votes, it can convert into, say, 20 seats. Then there could be difference. There could be gap between the two alliances. So anything can happen. So I'm not reading too much into exit poll results. I have been saying it all along. It's pretty tight, hung. That can go either way. It is happening that way. But what sense we can make out right now that Tejaswi has edge, advantage. There is a anti-Nitish vote that becomes evident. Of course, I would still say that Tejaswi has an advantage. I don't. Coming back to your question, of course, even if it's a very hypothetical question, if NDA comes to power, of course Nitish Kumar will be chief minister. There is no doubt about that. BJP can play its game later, but that is the big challenge. Whether that is happening, that is to be asked.
Deepankar, moving on to you, you have been to Simanchal, and this time Simanchal is likely to play a big role in how, in what way elections go. So tell us about that. Do you think AIM has an advantage? What is happening in Simanchal?
So again, not really psephologist, but I can tell you what the factors at play are. The factors at play is number one, that AIMIM is very popular amongst the Muslims in Simanchal particularly. They look at Owaisi as a leader. One of the big thematics of why they look at him very popularly is number one, how he stood for them in the anti-CAA protests. He held a huge rally in Kishanganj, which is still remembered. Number two is, and they feel like when the national parties dithered, of course, I mean, the BJP pushed the CAA. The Muslims also feel that the Congress may have dithered a little bit. So that's one factor that's working for AIMIM. Generally, Owaisi is seen predominantly amongst, you will find some people that will say that he is, he's too polarizing, even amongst Muslims, but majority will look at him as a very good leader. So for instance, for the conservative Muslim, he represents conservatism. For the young Muslim, he represents a barrister at law that fills his speeches in parliament with fact and argument, and they watch his, and especially on social media, on WhatsApp, they watch a lot of him. So the question of whether AIMIM is popular, the answer is yes. Now the problem with that is, what is its vote transferability? I think its vote transferability is slightly higher than last time, but does that mean that they actually win seats is another question. Simply because there is for the Muslims, especially given that there is a certain fear of the BJP with how hardline that it is seen to be with Yogi Adityanath campaigning, is that, should we be wasting our vote this time when we can see, at least in the first two phases, the one sense that you got was that the MGB was, the Mahagathbandhan was in a position where it could challenge to win. So in that sense, then, if you were to give your vote to the AIMIM, is that a wasted vote? I think Mr. Owaisi's cause or AIMM's cause has not been helped by Mayawati aligning ostensibly with the BJP in Uttar Pradesh either. So there is the larger umbrella of, an RJD, a non-BJP government coming in, which kind of is another factor that plays in people's minds. So I think that's very important. So that is basically the contest between familiarity with a government, a potential government which you would like to have, versus a party that you ideally, all conditions being equal, would have liked to vote for. So I think that's the contest in a lot of Muslim majority seats in Seemanchal. But I do think the fact that there is a potential government to be had, which is an RJD Congress government, I think that's a huge draw, particularly this time. I have a feeling that the stronger AIMIM would have been stronger if the options in front of them were weaker. The stronger the Mahagathbandhan gets, the lesser the chance people will ultimately take that plunge and vote for AIMIM. So I think that's a competing factor in Seemanchal particularly.
One question I'll put to both of you again, because both of you have been in different parts of Bihar. This time we have seen the narrative has been a identity plus narrative, as we talked about last time also. There are caste and religious identities, and then there is this whole economic distress, jobs. So the discourse has really been economic distress and identity playing into it. So overall, now that the three phases of voting are done, how do you think this election is tending? Is it becoming a more driven by populist promises, 10 lakh jobs, free COVID vaccines? So is it like more of a populist promises thing, or whose social engineering is working out, that kind of a thing? Santoshi, we'll start with you.
Yes, very pertinent question. See, I go back to 2005, even 2010 election, what Nitish Kumar did, he stitched a very good social combination with Lalu Prasad, number one. And then he just propelled his development phase. Of course, as I always say, development plank was the topping. It worked. So 60%, 70% base in Bihar politics would always be caste. That 30% topping would be the change of narrative you are talking about. This election saw the change of narrative in the sense Nitish Kumar was offering only the basics. He was fighting triple anti-incumbency, anger post-COVID, and migration. So many multiple factors at work, and then we all have already spoken about the LJP factor and other things. So many things went against him. So narrative change, in a sense, Tejaswi tried to address economic disparity in a different way, in a fast food politics way. He just promised 10 lakh jobs. He just offering quick fix, which is appealing to people, appealing to young crowd. So that's why when I say 70% caste, 30% wavering voters, that is where it gets mixed. You cannot say it's social engineering plus other votes. Of course, it's social engineering would always be there, as it was reflected in this board in seat sharing. As he addresses his constituency, it will reflect it everywhere. The old narrative of that nationalism, Ram temple, all these things are not working in this. People are pretty bored with all those hackneyed slogans now. So it's a post-COVID world. Politics is different. So it was the first election after COVID, and I think Bihar has set the trend. Boss, you have to talk about development. You have to address economic disparity. Minus 23% GDP. We are not going anywhere. So he has given hopes. That will need astronomical figure to give 10 lakh jobs. But people are not thinking about it. People are pretty happy. People are tired of Nitish Kumar. So I would still say advantage Tejas.
Deepankar, your thoughts?
So I think, I think we mentioned before in the last time, this is an election in extraordinary circumstances. And by extraordinary circumstances, I don't necessarily mean COVID, because frankly, nobody in Bihar seems to care about COVID. I mean the lockdown that was necessitated by COVID. So you're already facing, of course, social engineering existed. So which means there was a 10-12% gap between what the consensus was of the caste that the BJP and the JDU had together, and the Muslim and Yadav combination of the RJD. Now the question were those numbers being breached? And that was basically the contest. I think there is general consensus that there was anti-incumbency, that there is some element of economic distress. The question was, how much was it affecting that? And I think my answer to that is that this is an election in extraordinary economic distress. The shops being open, cars on the road is a facade. People are not going into shops. There are still people that came back that don't have the money to go back to their jobs, which means a lot of Bihar's economy was also a remittance economy. So people would go out and send money back home, and there isn't that kind of money that was happening. That kind of fed into, I think, what is a perfect storm. That perfect storm is a 3-term chief minister fighting for a 4th term. Social engineering in terms of the RJD being clever in its seat distribution, where it, widened its base as well. So it allowed for the opportunity for, certain castes to say, okay, at least we have a candidate of our own caste in particular areas. Then, of course, LJP came in and it gave people the option of voting for someone else when they didn't want to vote for Nitish Kumar, but they couldn't make the leap of voting for the RJD. Right. So, that vote kind of got split as well. And on top of that, you have, deep distress in terms of the cadres on the ground, in terms of trust. So I think all of those factors coming together made this a very dangerous election for Nitish Kumar. I think the results will, we'll have to wait and see. Again, the question is very simple. In one sense, if you simplify it, there is a 12% caste advantage in terms of social engineering. Is that being broken? And of course, the question after that is that being broken permanently? Or is there a sense of permanence to this? And the answer to my mind is that, that is only something that, frankly, the next government can answer. So if it is an opposition and they build on this and they kind of somehow seem to act on some of these promises, perhaps there will be a modicum of permanence, except that I want to keep reiterating that this was not an election in ordinary times. Normally there is some factor that works for an incumbent government. Here, when somebody is just earning 10% of their incomes, it is very difficult to generate any goodwill for a government. And whether that means you vote for the RJD who you've always hated, or you don't go to vote, or something else, that creates a lot of conditions which makes it difficult for an incumbent government.